is a partnership co-sponsored by Springplace, which I'm very proud to say that I've been a member of for a very long time. So very selfishly, for those of you that are new members or people that have never been to Springplace, it is truly the place that I call home when it comes to my work social. Hello everyone, welcome to Style and Taste. It is an experiential podcast which is broadcast live from places and spaces that embody hospitality and exceptional service. And then likewise, we are always looking to discover the people in the industries that are transforming life as we know it. So I'm your host, Michelle Collins. Today's guest is Gary Bhattacharjee. He is the VP of Infosys and head of the global practice of AI and data strategy. Thanks for joining, Gary.
Thank you for having me, Michelle.
So we sound very formal, but the truth is we've known each other for a very long time. So let's talk about the topic that, quite candidly, I'm kind of tired of talking about, but I feel like we need to have real conversations about it. So AI, everybody's talking about it. Some people are big proponents for it. Some people think it's going to be the end of humanity. So I thought it's time to have real talk with somebody who has been working behind the scenes, creating the very thing for over 2 decades. So Gary.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh my gosh, don't tell people that. You'll think I'm very old. What is your point of view? Is AI a human empowerment tool, or is it human existential crisis?
So I think that in about 50 or 60 years ago, when Oppenheimer discovered atom bomb, he sent a letter, and he did discuss the use of that technology, whether it was going to be used for human good or destruction of humanity. I think in a very similar way, we're in that inflection point today, right, with AI, where it is a fantastic tool. However, if it's not controlled properly, it could be quite catastrophic.
Okay, well, that's a little bit scary. That wasn't exactly where we thought we were going to start, but let's start there. So to build upon that, I picked up the New York Times article, and I quote, the title was, "The Godfather of AI Leaves Google and Warns of Danger Ahead." Mm-hmm. Clearly, a man that says the glass is empty, not even half full. Could you extract your thoughts and share with us, what do you think about that?
Right, so yeah, the glass is empty for him. However, there are a lot of ways to make sure that the AI is used responsibly, right? And with the technologies and the tools and the governance and other things that we have at our disposal today, we should be able to use AI in a very productive way.
May I ask you that question? I don't want to lose that thought. What are those tools that we can use to monitor, regulate that you just hinted to? And I think we should talk about that more honestly.
Right. Yeah, so see, AI, if you think of AI, it is a mathematical tool. It's a mathematical, accelerator of different algorithms and how it makes decisions at the end of the day, right, from a scientific standpoint. But it has 2 parts to it. It has this AI platform, where all these algorithms and mathematics work and it scales. And then there is the training and how you train these things. So the first part, and which is where all the advances in science and technology has come through and has made AI such a popular thing today, is great. And this is why we can use AI and leverage AI. But the second part is where there are chances that we can go wrong, right, on how we train it. And we need to be able to train AI in the way that it produces the right results or the right outcomes.
So let me pick up there. Mm-hmm. We have to be able to train the AI. Well, first, it'd be great for you to explain in more depth how one trains AI, because technically speaking, it is based on an algorithm. The second, I'd love to really get into real talk with you about is the thing that I think we talk about regularly, which is, has the evolution and the foundation been created by and led by a vacuum of, let me just say the thing that a lot of people are afraid to say, male-dominated white men who have a very distinct point of view. We as a culture right now are at this,
tipping point of how do we change the dynamic. So if you're
Right.
talking about training, I'm a little worried. These are the people, company excluded, that have been training the AI. So could you share your thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head on the very, very important topic on how do you create a good society by using AI in the right way. Of course, that requires the diversity, of thought. The diversity of thought, not just in gender, but also in race and ethnicities and demographics, which are underrepresented in modern world. And in a way, AI can help. Sometimes in our social structure, we suppress certain demographics and ethnicities.
So let me put you in the hot seat a little bit. So my colleague, and I quote, and let me back up by saying, my colleague Neela is a fantastic, successful female entrepreneur in the IT space. And we were talking about this, and roughly 12% of AI researchers are women, only 12%,
Right.
and about 6% are software engineers. This is clearly not exactly the way that I envision the world being balanced and whole. So is this the problem that we are faced with, is if we're going to train AI to be a good member of society, how do we fix the inequality and the gender bias that already exists?
Right. So that's a very difficult thing to do with the way different genders get exposed to different kind of education opportunities, right? But that being said, there are some silver linings. So first, if you look at the STEM education today, right? Mm-hmm. STEM or STEAM, as they call it now, there are more and more women who are going into STEM. It's exponentially increasing. Men are dropping out, boys are dropping out of college and doing other things. More females out there. So that's a very encouraging sign. But then there's the other thing. It's
See,
not
I knew
just.
This is why we were friends. Okay.
There is this other thing. It's not just about writing the code of creating the technology, right? It's about training, which is a separate activity. And most of the training is done by people who are trained in liberal arts, in other things, in creative, parts of the thing. And those are the people who actually train AI. And that there is a lot more diversity there today. One might argue there's also less diversity there, but it's definitely a lot more diversity there.
So that's hopeful because we're broadcasting live from Springplace. It's a creative membership workspace. It's also where many creative projects, the Tribeca Film Festival, Fashion Week, are actually produced and shot. So I picked this space because it's what I would consider home. It gives me a lot of hope and optimism that the creatives of the world, the artistry of the world could actually help tip the scale. But what we feel as creatives, as a member of that culture, the thing that we struggle with is how to use the tool correctly. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to come back to when you bring up training.
Right.
How do we train AI? Let's be really concrete for the users. Well, is rule number one, you got to break the friction and the fear and get on an AI community. Mm-hmm. It is a community, by the way, and a platform in itself, and start to use it and start to remove the fear of using the technology?
That's one thing, but I think the best technologies of AI are such that they are normally used. So for example, I'm just going to take Google for example, right? When you use Google today, you look for things, places to eat, places to go for reviews. The more you use it, the engine behind Google learns how you use it, and it learns from the way you're using it.
But some people are actually quite afraid of that.
Yeah, but if it's true, it doesn't collect personal data, it just collects behavioral data to make sure that the AIs are trained properly.
Wait, did you hear that? I just want everyone to make a mental note, check that, fact check that. I'm not sure I believe that, but I'll take your word for now.
So take my word for now. It does, so it gets into more technicalities. It does get the personal data, but it doesn't really store it, and you do have access to your personal data, which you can delete later and what have you. But more importantly, it understands the way you use it and the way you ask the questions, the way you when you find something wrong, you report it, right? So this is not right. All of this are training materials that goes into AI, And when you use AI to create things, what we do is we create these things called weights or biases within the system. So the more weight we give to a certain decision, that AI engine will follow that particular path. And the way to create these weights and biases is by using AI and correcting AI when it comes up with some information.
Could we help the audience understand?
Mm-hmm.
I think AI is very broad.
Oh, yeah.
So, just like I'm going to say it, NFT buzzword, nobody wants to hear it, but I think the trouble that emerged from using it as such a broad term is that we weren't precise. So there is obviously NFT art, etc.
Right.
I want to throw out something, a bit of a giggle. So when I decided that this was going to be our topic, I went to ChatGPT
Mm-hmm.
to ask ChatGPT the
Right.
question that I just asked Gary: is AI human empowerment or human existential crisis? And it gave me its scale of pros and cons, which
Right.
is how I crafted our discussion. So we're actually talking about the very thing that ChatGPT produced. So there's ChatGPT,
Mm-hmm.
there's Dolly, there's Midjourney, to name some of the top 3 uses.
Right.
They all have very different, I feel like they have very different applications. The interface design, the user experience is very different.
Yeah, yeah.
So help us understand, like, if I was starting the conversation, so I want to be part of the society that helps train AI for good.
Mm-hmm.
How do I start?
So you can use either one or all of those things depending on what you want to use. OpenAI or the ChatGPT is probably the largest, pre-trained language model.
Pretend we're not smart people.
So-
What does OpenAI even mean? Does anybody know really what it means?
So OpenAI is the community that has started this thing called the large language model, based upon which GPT and all these other things, have evolved, right? And it's the one that's out there today has been trained with more than 1 trillion things like words and tokens to create all the output you need. So the more you train something, the better outputs you get, right? Now, the thing that you asked about how do we train it is that today OpenAI gets trained from whatever is out there on the internet. It had looked for all the different things from up to, I think, 2021 and collected and curated that information to create this language model, as they call it, to provide the answers for all the questions you need.
So maybe I can break down even more simple for all of us.
Right.
I'm looking for a great recipe.
Yeah.
It's right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's Thanksgiving. Let's make it a little bit less scary, and let's just say we used to go to Google and Martha Stewart recipes. How would potentially the use amongst the larger communities using AI as a tool set add value to my life at just trying to find a food recipe?
Well, you can do even more than that, right? I think you can, finding a food recipe, you can just Google it.
But isn't Google using AI?
Well, Google is using some parts of AI, right? But what ChatGPT and other things are doing, they're using a more advanced version of it.
Right.
Now, Google did come up with another tool called Bard just a few weeks ago, right? Which is competing with OpenAI or GPT. But the idea is that you want to ask ChatGPT to write you a poem, or write you a song, or write you a love letter. So you can do all of that.
You get in big trouble with your wife. Let me tell you something. If your wife found out that you went to ChatGPT to have ChatGPT write that love note, you will not be in that house for very much longer. I'm just saying. Ladies, weigh in.
What if that love note was for my wife?
What do you mean?
What if that love note was for my wife?
Do we have a phone line? Is there like a call Gary's wife line? I think we need that in our show. We don't have that, but make a note. We'll do that next time.
So those are the kind of things you can't search for, right? It needs creative things to come out of a thing. So those are the things what ChatGPT can help you with, even more than what you can find from Google. So for example, you ask ChatGPT the questions, and are you good or bad, right? And it gave you an answer. But in ChatGPT, there is a little button there which says, give me another answer. You can hit that button, right? It'll probably give you a different answer.
Sounds like a great way to try to create a argument, case study, running some scenarios where you're in big trouble and you're trying to figure out all the different variations of the response you're supposed to have.
You could potentially do that too. But see, that's one of the things about, interesting things about AI, right? So it's just like a human in a way. When you ask a human a particular question, you get an answer. You ask the same question again, you might get a different answer, all right? And if you think about it in that particular way, AI is not just a computer where you just ask a question and get the same answer with the same question, right? You ask the same question many times, you'll get different answers. And some of them might be similar, some of them might be not. And that's okay.
Okay, so we've talked about what I think is the application of OpenAI specific to ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
Let's pivot to another hot topic, which is the fear in the art and creative industry that IP rights and the creativity that artists bring to the table is now subject to anyone copying, using without any kind of rights association or limitations. What is that about, and like, what is your point of view on that?
So that's a new world, right? So it's, plagiarism and copyrights were controlled by laws which apply to humans. But now when AI can do that essentially in a much scarier and much bigger way.
Uh-oh, we're going down the dark rabbit hole.
We don't yet have the laws to control it, and we should definitely build those laws to control it. Now, it gets the lines get very murky, right? There is a thing called text to image or text to video. I can write a piece of text and it says, give me some pink, taxi cabs in New York City, and the Google CEO was on 60 Minutes a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about that. But it'll show you some pink taxi cabs in New York City, moving around in a video that's obviously AI generated. So think about brand marketing. Think about the things that you can do today, which requires creative, artists to come together to create this very personal brand that promotes the product. You can now potentially do it by some person who doesn't have that and just write a sentence and, hey, I want a cat which looks like this and promotes this brand, and boom, something comes out.
So I think there's two things that you've touched upon that are very interesting. One is you reference, when we Google search now and images come up, we have a way of protecting that, both from a technology side as well as traditional laws of copyright, watermarks, et cetera. Is there a way, since you're working in this space, is there an element of what's being engineered to create that kind of, we'll call it ethics, governance? So let's say I'm in Midjourney and I'm using these references and it's pulling from something that has been copyright or protected. Is there a possibility where the creator is being notified that this is actually under copyright protection and that we would have to get release from X to use this?
Those are coming. So, so GPT-4.
I knew it. I knew it.
So GPT-4, which has come out, right? So there are watermarking capabilities now.
Great.
There's other thing called Hugging Face. There's other things which.
What is it called?
Hugging Face.
Hugging Face?
Yeah. It's
is this a code language we need to know about? Hugging Face.
So they only operate on public domain art, right? So they're obviously doesn't get into this hot water of taking IP and creative things of that. But so those things are very important, and I call them like the lineage of art or the lineage of knowledge. So when you create a new art, right, you are picking things from different pieces from different things and you're splicing them together. That's what the AI is doing. So you need to know where you're picking it from and make sure that that's documented in the product that you're producing. Now, that requires some technology and things of the nature to do. Those are coming, of course. But even beyond that, I think you also need proper laws that what you can or cannot use. Those also need to come. The Congress, the lawmakers, and all these guys have to.
Oh, that's scary. We know how politics is.
That'll take some time, but yes, those are the.
So Gary, are you saying that we might need something like, because this is global, it's not even regional or just community based, we're talking global. So it's almost as if there needs to be a UN global ethics committee and committee of governance that is both human and also AI assigned. I think of it in that terms. You know how much of a sci-fi fan I am, so
Right.
I think of that in those terms. I mean, is it even feasible?
So the last part about whether AI should be a lawmaker and a congressman, well, that's a separate topic. We probably should
Ooh, we
elect
can
an
have
AI.
that conversation. That would be very cool.
But in terms of creating AI ethics and AI governance, there are bodies in WEF, World Economic Forum. There are conversations in UN. There is a Biden directive about the AI Bill of Rights, which was published last year, which is in whitehouse.gov. So there are these frameworks and guidelines which are coming up.
So why aren't we as consumers and the wider audience made aware of it? You know, all we see are these scary headlines. You know, oh, he quits Google. We've got Twitter announcements. I think the fear is something that disturbs me tremendously. I think consumers are so much more savvy now, users, creators. Number one, I think the takeaway for the audience is there are in fact protocols being put into place because it is a business, at the end of the day, that needs to have what we call foundational operational procedures. So this is just going to take some time to catch up, and I think Gary and I have been talking about these things for quite a long time. So as a creator, I've always felt more comfortable with the conversation. Also, as somebody who believes that data in the end is what we put into it, I think the biggest fear that I personally have is that we don't have enough say, we don't have enough seats at the table. Again, hearing this from you versus why aren't we hearing this from the experts? Why do I have to read in the New York Times? You know, the godfather of blah, blah, blah is leaving and he thinks that AI is going to be the end of humanity. Listen, actor time, sad card. I mean, Terminator, are we heading into the world of the movie Terminator? Is this going to happen?
So the journey of AI in scientific terms, they have like three varieties. It's called ANI, or artificial narrow intelligence, which is about predictions and machine learning and data science and all that stuff. And then what's called AGI. So ANI is where we think of this AI having intelligence which is less than a human. We teach AI something and AI would do that, or classic AI. The next step is what they call AGI, or artificial general intelligence, where the AI would have an intelligence equal to a human, right? So one way I explain this sometimes is when you're driving a car and you have your GPS system on there, right? And it tells you how to go from point A to point B with all the traffics and everything. That's ANI, like narrow intelligence. It tells you how to, you're still driving. AGI is with the self-driving cars, sort of, right, where you're not driving, right? The GPS system is telling the car where to go. You're just sitting there making sure the car is going in the right direction. It's doing your job, but not doing better than you.
By the way, I remember when you got your Tesla and you were so excited to show me this.
Right.
We talked about this.
It's pretty scary, but it does drive by itself. So that's called AGI, and that's the place where we are today, where we're driving to us with generative AI and ChatGPT and what have you. The next level is what's called ASI, or artificial superintelligence. We're not there yet, but this is when the machine is supposed to have intelligence greater than human intelligence.
When are we going to get there? Let's be honest. I think that's what we're hearing, that the predictions are it's going to evolve faster than one originally thought.
It is definitely going there. Now, there are two things to think about and two paradigms to think about, right? One is that for that to happen, an AI need to be able to converse with another AI machine and understand each other properly.
Oh my God, that is so
and
scary.
that's a little of a mathematical problem at the moment, but we are getting there.
Okay, let's keep that problem for a while.
But then there's another philosophical argument. Can you create something which is better than the creator? And that's.
Are we talking about the movie Prometheus?
Oh.
Are we going down
well,
that
I mean,
pathway?
there are a lot of other. Yeah, that is that. So is it possible for any entity, whether it's human or non-human, to create something that is greater than that particular entity? That's a philosophical argument which haven't sorted that out. Maybe it's just like something which will taper off and will never be better than us because we'll always be better than whatever we create. But we don't know yet.
Okay, let me play that the cup is half full for humanity.
Of course it is, yeah.
And the idea being that perhaps this potential rise and threat for some is a wake-up call for mankind to rise, to be more evolved, to be better human beings, to be more focused on knowledge, research, creativity, lesser than, you know, what we have, I think, perhaps as a society been so obsessed with. Maybe this is less about just pure social media and the context of that, so that AI, if you believe that it has a good purpose, perhaps it's actually challenging us as humanity to be smarter, to be better, to use more than whatever that percentage of our brain is that we use. But Gary, at the end of the day, where do you live? Is it human empowerment or is it human existential crisis?
Of the human empowerment. I am a big optimist, as you probably know. I always see things full. And no, it's absolutely human empowerment. The things that you can do with AI, it excites me day in and day out. It amplifies good thoughts. It amplifies good behavior. Yes, there are negative, influences which we can regulate itself out. But the opportunity that an AI can do, that AI can write a Shakespeare sonnet, And,
oh, I'm so glad Shakespeare is not alive today.
and or you can write a Taylor Swift song, which is easier.
Taylor Swift, please do not watch this show.
Hope she does. But so those are the things you can do, and yes, it challenges creative kinds to become even more creative, right? So don't write every song about a breakup because it becomes repetitive. Then AI can do that.
Are you talking to Taylor Swift again?
I am.
Oh my God.
But
Oof, do you have a daughter, Gary? You know we should be talking about this.
It challenges originality. It challenges the boundaries. So it makes us better.
Okay, fair enough. So we're about to wrap up. So audience and viewers, I think that we've talked about a lot of things. We've talked about the creation of AI, where it is right now, the things that are actually happening in the background that you don't hear about, which is going to support IP protection and governance. We as human beings have an opportunity to help train AI, but that means you actually have to stop being afraid of it and start participating and taking a seat at the table. That is my attitude. So I answer my own question. I believe that AI can be human empowerment. However, I do strongly advocate that we need to have more diversity, inclusivity at the table. I mean, look at me. I think that it's important for creatives, business entrepreneurs, technologists, wide range of people who daily interact. You need to help the AI train, as well as we need to create communities that are championing the good for humanity. Rise above the pettiness, accelerate learning, accelerate cultural integrity and inclusivity, and certainly protect the IP of others that have spent their lifelong, talents and intelligence to create things. So I love that idea that there is going to be a way by code and by ethics that we're going to protect that. So we're about to sign off. Sadly, you have not had an opportunity to have the glass of one of my favorite champagnes, Renard, but we will, right, Gary?
Yes, we will.
Yes, we will, right? So we're going to sign off, and thank you for joining us. This is Michelle Collins. This is Style and Taste, an experiential podcast, and we were live at Springplace. You have discovered Gary Bhattacharjee, and we hope that you learned a lot about AI, and we hope that you will share. So please subscribe, and then stay tuned for our next episodes.